there is no analysis, someone is just going to blow up. The Great Frushkurin, everybody. Hi, my name's Sebastian, this is Vision Denial, and the Road to MSI, where I watch all 12 regions participating in MSI's playoff series, including this one, and yes, that one also. This video we have RNG versus Top Esports, and this is the second playoff series in a row where I see open Nexus, and it comes down to a TP or sneaking into the base to finish off the game in the series. It's really stressful. It gets to your blood pressure. Now, remember the last time I mentioned that for this series that depending on how it went would really explain to me how would really tell me whether or not it would be FPX or EDG that wins, depending on how this series wins. And I can solidly tell you I have no idea. None. Zero. This is absolutely ridiculous. Both of these teams completely opt out of their playstyles, opt into their playstyles, decide to play not the meta at all, play way into the meta, play passively, aggressively, cowardly, and everything all the way around. Things I like. Super creative drafting all around. Things I don't like. Some of the drafting decisions are a little whack. Things that are great, they all play to their win conditions super well. Things that are not so great, sometimes that involves being super out positions because they're way overconfident. Like, this series encapsulates everything about this particular meta. So, a couple of thoughts. Top Esports had a pretty solid set of 3 playoff series where their over-aggression overwhelmed a lot of people, and so they got away with a lot of stuff that they should have been punished for, where this time they were punished for much more often. I think the best comparison for the other video I just did hours ago, the previous video, the one about the Pentanet GG, shows that, like, this is what it looks like when a team that's over-aggressive gets punished frequently, right? It's not that the team that's over-aggressive will lose out automatically, but that they become more and more hesitant as things go on to actually make those plays, and then they don't know how to engage into the composition without getting punished. And it's really weird to see this, because it just shows that, so Top Esports gets 3-0'd by EDG, and then they get then it's a 3-2 versus RNG. This gives me no indication of what the power scale is for the other 2 teams, but this does give me an indication that the successful thing here is not whether or not one team is aggressive and one team is reactive. It is which team can control the tempo better and understands when to engage into a fight. Because so far, most of the series up until this point was just showing me that either you're over-aggressive and you know how to do the aggression well, or you're over-aggressive and you get punished for it. This is not at all the case. And that's fine, right? Like, the meta changes over time, and also the way that teams play and adapt over time is also an indication of, like, things to come. And so the question I have over my head here is, how well does RNG play against their next opponents? Because they'll be either having a rematch against Fun Plus Phoenix, or they'll be playing against EDG. And EDG handled Top Esports significantly better, and they weren't handling Fun Plus Phoenix better. And these 2 teams were very close in terms of execution and skill. So I don't think that RNG is going to win their next series. If they do, they have a massive improvement that they've done. Part of that would be making sure to be more consistent in the way that they punish out really poor drafting decisions. They have to be, I don't want to say more consistent, but they have to have more willingness to go for neutral objectives, because this last fifth game, really like relied specifically on RNG stealing objectives, for lack of a better term. It was an absolute fiesta. What else? I think that the wave manipulation that RNG showed, great. Top Esports had some fantastic plays using their vision. Both sides did, really. And Top Esports played lanes in terms of like 1-3-1 much better. Baron use is super efficient on both sides. I'm just going through all of my notes because this was like a really interesting set of games. And honestly, I highly recommend watching this series. At least Game 5. I think Games 1, 2, and 4 can be skipped. 4 is really weird as a series. Let's see here. I think what's more disappointing, however, is that both sides opted into being very defensive in their starts at level 1. Not a single level 1 play that I could recall or that I even noted, which is unfortunate because I think that could have done a lot to swing the tides one way or the other through all of these games. Top Esports also, so there's a lot of going on through. I'm just going through all my notes and just gathering thoughts at the same time. A nice difference maker also here is that that our Royal Never Give Up RNG recognized when Top had these over aggressive moments that they played with, and were able to play the early games consistently. And the casters mentioned this. The casters mentioned, oh no, Jackie Love and Joe are over aggressive at 5 minutes, getting ganked again. What's gonna happen? And this keeps happening over and over and over again. And this happens throughout almost the entire game. 369 in the mid game frequently gets caught out during like a split push. Knight gets over aggressive and overzealous and then ends up being caught out. Jackie Love just out of position for some reason and gets dove in. And RNG doesn't have those like moments in my head that come up so often. I think the difference here is that RNG are definitely the more reactive team, but that doesn't mean that they spent the entire time being reactive. But they are definitely the ones that are the more like reserved. And I think that helps with this kind of team that they're facing, that they kept they, instead of just going and pushing consistently, they held back a bit of their aggression and waited for Top to just kind of, they did the bull maneuver frequently. And I think it was hilarious to watch, really. Oh my goodness. It's honestly super fun to watch. And this, I think, recontextualizes the floor conversation that I had for the region. Now, again, China's region is huge. It's really hard to indicate anything, but it's likely FunPlus or EDG that's going to win the whole thing. These two teams are too equal, and they both got absolutely demolished by those other two teams. And so, like, RNG playing against whoever is going to be the loser of the next series is just inevitable at this point. Or if they do manage to pull it off, I don't think they'll do it again for whoever wins that other one. Like, it doesn't. So, how does this compare? It shows to me that there was a very big gap of the top 4 teams and everyone else in China. And that's fine, right? Like, that happens sometimes in most regions. The fact of the difference here is that the size of this playoff was literally the size of most other series, or sorry, splits. Like, so the point of comparison is, where do we set the floor for China, right? Do we set the floor literally at the top 4 where their elimination bracket is? That would match a lot of the small regions. If we do, then this is a very highly competitive floor, but it has a lot of its flaws. Do we compare it to everywhere else? Like, where do we stop? Do we do all 10? Because then it's like a very high variance region. Some of the teams were inconsistent, did too much repetition within their drafts, and all the rest. So, like, do we take the average? Do we take it at the 6th place right before the elimination bracket? There's a hard tell for where the floor is, comparatively speaking, to where the floor is for the other regions, because they're much smaller usually, so it's easier to compare who the lowest part of the playoff is versus the top of the playoffs. So, for sake of conversation, we're going to compare it to about the same size as everyone else, right? We're going to do top 4 for smaller regions or regions who only have small playoff series. If that's the case, this is really weird to read. They show that there's a very high amount of variance into their plays, that they're very good in vision and wave control, and like whoever's behind or ahead will both play equally as well, but that they often coin flip and rely still on one team out positioning over the other. And that's something I criticize frequently of the smaller regions. Now, if we were to compare it to the top 6 or top 8, then the floor is fairly fantastic, right? The way that the upper teams play against the floors, and the way that the floors don't rely on high variance plays as frequently, shows me that they're doing great. And here lies my problem. I can't solidly say that the Chinese region will do better than Korea. In the same way that, like, Korea didn't have enough games for me to tell, I'm not going to have enough. There's too much of a gap between, like, where do we start? I'm going to go with the safe route here and say that because the top 4 teams were so consistently better than everybody else, the bottom 6 teams, that it shows a likelihood that whoever comes out of this, either FunPlus or EDG, I don't think RNG again is going to make it through. If they do, lots of improvement in terms of their reservations, because I think that's still a thing that holds them back. It helped them against this team, but they need to be able to put pressure more often and pick up the pace on some of their plays. So whoever wins between FPX and EDG is likely going to be the one that goes forward, regardless of the rematch or not. I'm pretty convinced of that fact. The rematches sometimes don't show much, other than if they improve, then that's a good sign for that team internationally, but that's usually not what happens. Whoever wins in this region is likely going to be the favorite with an asterisk. And my asterisk is really based off of how does North America, Vietnam, and the Pacific region end their series, because the Tier 2 teams tend to be the difference maker amongst how the Tier 1 teams play with each other. And how does Europe's team that qualifies plays? Because I'm confident in saying that Europe has the least amount of variance in terms of their top 6 teams. And so the floor to ceiling comparison is much easier to do for the top team compared to everyone else's regions. But nothing about the way that Europe is playing currently tells me that they will solidly get first. And so I think this is a close race for this year's MSI. Yeah. And we still got like at least 18 series. I haven't counted them. So this will be fun. You guys let me know what you think in the comments down below. Up next, we're going back to the Pacific for Hong Kong Attitude versus Machi X. Like and subscribe to enjoy the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.